Poetry's Enchantment by former NEA chair and public poet Dana Goya stresses the oral tradition as the source of written poetry and prose. Poems were sung and acted as a collective honoring of memory and place. The Jack Straw program offers us a chance to reclaim this tradition. There is singing and crying in this collection, with traditions from as far apart as Iceland and Cambodia, the forests of Poland to the suburbs of Florida. Many of these writers are extremely accomplished, and I thank the staff at the Jack Straw Foundation for asking me to work with them. It really, truly has been an honor. The more I consider these writers, I realize that they are survivors, either personally of extreme circumstances or historically as the inheritors of stories. We tell stories in order to survive, but also to honor those who came before us. We name names. We consider what actions enabled our ancestors to survive, and we discard those things that hindered them. We uncover old stories people have tried to cover up, and we save objects that embody story. At the same time, these stories can be a burden. A sense of social justice or inheritance of family legacy can weigh on the writers who receive these stories. They feel compelled to find a way to express them. We don't just use words to tell stories. Many of these stories are grief transformed into beauty. They reflect the exhilaration and terror of being a survivor. I sense that these writers have found joy in getting to know each other, and I hope they carry that joy out of the Jack Straw Studios and into their publishing careers. Vi Hilbert was a revered Lachute storyteller who promoted active listening. A story calls for a response from the listener. I hope these stories call to you to respond either by hearing them out loud at one of the public readings on the Jack Straw blog or in the published anthology of their work. Be an active listener. Share these stories. Respond to the writers. Take action to be sure these stories can continue to be told and heard. And now, about our readers tonight. Mateo Bracken is a poet, librettist, and actor who splits his time between Auburn and Seattle, Washington. He was the 2023-2024 Seattle Youth Poet Laureate and currently serves as the 2024 to 2026 Auburn Poet Laureate. His works have appeared or are forthcoming in the Gay and Lesbian Review, Echo X, the Washington State Queer Poetry Anthology, Abya Yala, Indigenous Connections in Latin America, Creative Colloquy, Bird Brains, a lyrical guide to the birds of Washington State, and more. As a librettist in the Seattle Opera Creation Lab, he developed the 20-minute chamber opera Blood Dawn of the NT Sun in collaboration with composer Mina Pariseau. His first chapbook, Dear Spanish, was published in 2024 through Poetry Northwest and explores the languages of identity, heritage, and belonging. He's currently working on a manuscript about the settler colonial history of Auburn in verse. Mia Tong is a writer of YA, AAPA, and immigrant fiction, and Mia will be appearing remotely tonight. Her debut novel is part of a duology that is inspired by her East Asian heritage, her interests in Pan-Asian philosophies and mythology, and the visual and cultural art of Asia. Her stories appear in the South Shore Review, Bright Flash Literary Review, The Weather Where You Are, and Bending Genres. In 2024, she was a writer-in-resident at Porter Square Books, where she was a conversation partner for YA writers. Her work has received fellowship support from the Key West Literary Seminar, was selected for the Story Knife Writers Retreat, and has received recognition as a finalist for several residencies and awards. She holds a master's degree in creative writing from Harvard and is an alumna of the Yale Writers' Workshop. In the moments between writing and thinking about writing, she's also a certified Ikebanist. She has traveled near and far, but still calls the Boston area home. Find her online. Makayla Danielle Gay hails from southern Kentucky. Her work has appeared in Adroit, Prairie Schooner, and American Literary Review, among others. Her debut collection, Hackles, from Girl Noise Press, 2025, is available now. Jason Prokowiew, wherever you went, there you are, received the PEN America Gene Stein Grant for Literary Oral History for War Boys, a braided memoir about his Russian father's adoption by Nazis during World War II and the trauma he carried into parenthood. Jason earned an MFA in creative nonfiction from George Mason University. His writing has appeared in the North American Review, The Guardian, The Hooley Review, Salon, WBUR's Cognoscenti, and on World Channel's Stories from the Stage. His Stories from the Stage piece, Sing, is the most viewed in the show's history. Jason has received support from Breadloaf, Tin House, Ragdale, and the Massachusetts Cultural Council. He lives on a lake in Massachusetts with his husband Dave and their greyhound, Champ. And now, the readers. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Hi. So I will be reading from that manuscript mentioned at the end of my bio about Auburn settler colonial history. When I first became the poet laureate, I was pretty unaware. Our public education system is not that good, especially when it comes to the truth. So this is kind of a digging back into the archives and kind of directly marking and remaking it. So most of these poems, I think with the exception of one, is erasure, which is a form of poetry where you quite literally like take out or erase parts of the text. And then there's also a few blackout poems where instead of erasing, you're blacking it out. So. History remembered our future as a place annually threatened, a frontier. Today, we rough this city, ring in the whistle of industry, uninviting crossroads. Early settlers found. Today's newcomer finds equal opportunities to center and form the everyday occurrences of yesterday. Today, we maintain the ideas of our ancestors. For the future of our children, we approach history. A town named Slaughter. The 1855 Battle of Brannan Prairie was not a battle. It was an ambush, and it was not 40 miles from here, at that time of year when leaves are undressed from their trees and splayed on the earth like dirty laundry, moldy and unaired. 100 men, half deployed soldiers, half local volunteers, trekked through the valley in a sweet echo chamber of circular logic that called fate man-made, that could turn water, wine, red. They scouted the banks of the White River for holy targets. X is but a sideways cross. When they saw Indians, they shot, so the natives shot back, bullets fired back and forth over a river too large and too deep to cross, yet this boundary would someday too be torn down and redirected. By the time it was done, the Army's lieutenant boasted 30 Indians were dead, but only one of his men. Only a few months earlier, 8 settlers were killed, and it was called murder, remembered as massacre. The dead softened to settlers. A month later, the Army set up camp at an abandoned hut to dry their clothes, wet with war, heavy soaked with rain. Whose spirit walked and left the bones of a place for picking? Details wear like their leather boots slogged with mud and triumph. Odors of mulch and musk hung from their uniforms. Was the fabric navy or gray? Soft or itchy? Did any of them sense they were being watched? What kind of gun was used? Whose precision lodged a single rifle ball between the logs of the hut into the Army lieutenant's heart? And when this city was a town, established 30 years after his death, given his last name like a widowed bride, did its citizens know what creature was forming in her womb? Obit. Slaughter killed the White River. Slaughter was sent to man the country and cooperate with the commands of his company, white men intending to captain a good savage to slaughter is. A bullet, the heart of an officer, is boundless slaughter, well-known lover of death. Death, our country is deprived, a body in a canoe interred with Masonic and military citizens who belong to a vacuum that can never be filled, who slaughter in the field and return immediately to stay, escort evidence to their parents' home. Officers court slaughter, propose marriage by letter, but never post it. A broken heart lies in the plot of a lover. Slaughter is now buried in the state of Washington. Tenant. Slaughter was interred in the ground, in the weather, in the deep memory of this county. Time groups us citizens in vehicles and on foot, hastening, anxious to pay, to remain on the grounds. We service the company, an infant under command, drawn to receive the corpse in regalia, coffin draped with keys and the deceased, the discharged soldiers, the company, the grave, the feral ritual of the free. Assisted by the remains of slaughter, we co-sign the tomb. Session Laws, 1893. Changing name of the town of Slaughter to the town of Auburn. An act changing the name of a corporation to the town of Auburn. enacted by the legislature of the state of Washington. Slaughter, county of King, and be the same, hereby changed to the town of Auburn. Section 2, this act shall take force. Approved February 21st, 1893. This next poem is where the name Auburn came from. This is how they picked the name Auburn. The poem is about a town named Auburn that doesn't actually exist yet. So this is one of those reminders that life sometimes imitates art. This poem, I should also add, was originally written in 1775 by the Irish poet Oliver Goldsmith, and it was critiquing English colonialism in Ireland. So same colonizer, different time. The deserted village. Sweet Auburn, loveliest village of the plain. We lent labor. Was it paid? Dear lover of innocence and ease, seat of my youth when every sort could please, how I loitered over thy green, where humble pines endeared each scene. How often have I paused on every harm, the sheltered cot, the cultivated farm, the failing brook, the busy mill, the church atop the neighboring hill, the hawthorn bush beneath the shade, age and whispering over maid. How often have I blessed the coming day? Toil lent its turn to pay. The village train from labor free led to eat the spading tree. We man a time circled in shade, the young tending, the old surveyed. When man gambled over the ground, and sleights of art and feats went round, and as each peated pleas tired, seeding ports the mirthful band inspired, an air that imply sought renown, by holding a other down. These were thy harms, sweet village, sports like these, with sweet succession taught even oil to please. Thy bowers cheerful shed, these were thy harms, but all these harms are fed. This last poem is partly about Auburn's history as an industrial town with the train, which also made an appearance in the poem. So that last poem. So there's some debate on whether that came from because there was some similarities or if that was a coincidence. It's very unclear, but this is kind of, in my own words, kind of reaction to that and kind of the way that the history is currently talked about in Auburn. Clearing and grading the ground, created began the yard, begot the train. Lone pipeline, open flower of the West, floating lotus on Little Seuss Creek, circa 2025. Ready for structure, the ground arched for structure, said the grid. Part and arrow the people, said the bow. U.S. Army uniforms, circa 1980. Swastika armband, circa 1940. Items for sale at Auburn's Antique Marketplace, circa 2024. A roundhouse was built around the turntable of circa, a minor song, an economic boom. The new real estate wasn't really circa time immemorial. Sold at Denny Cabin circa 1889, then again and again sampled loops of a noose. Fallen trees ring time is an open wound. A plaque at the White River History Museum says the Muckleshoot Reservation was established as a home for the native peoples. It talks in circas, smokestack signals. But the train is always moving, so the message is always changing. The record plays its sweet, sweet music, circa, 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 but never reaches the center. Thank you.
All right. Can everyone hear me all right in the room? Okay, thumbs up means, multiple thumbs up means yes. So good evening. My name is Mia Tong. It's such an honor to be part of this program, so I just want to express first my gratitude to Jack Straw and to Kathleen as the curator. I am joining remotely from the Boston area, and the anthology contribution that I'm about to share is a short story. It was written kind of as part of an overall approach to trying to world build for my project, which is a duology, YA duology of East Asian fantasy adventure, kind of depicting a hero's journey, but more kind of reinvented from a young girl's perspective. So this story is about it's about a parasol maker, and he is kind of a side character, a very small character. But as we all know, small characters can play big roles in certain contexts. So I'm very excited to share. The parasol maker. At first light, the display parasols, the golden patterns of writhing dragons and fluttering phoenixes, come to life. The outside rhythm is as sure a sound as drum beats, the ones that carry parade, procession, royal patrons, and war. First, the crowing of a dozen of the egg sellers' emerald-plumed roosters, then hisses of steam from the street vendors' walks. Carts are wheeled. Lazy dogs follow behind their owners, tongues loosed, hoping for a bite of anything that rolls their way. Though my customers arrive later, they expect expediency on top of my reputation for quality, and as my years have taught me, it is far easier for my coin purse to push myself harder than to badger and hen with one of them. I work with one ear tuned to the noises building past my door. My hands can twist, ply, cut the long bands of dried bamboo as easily as if I were braiding dog's tail grass by the narrow length of river that twines past my veranda. Rice paper, so thin and translucent, in an amateur's hands would have ripped. But I know how to keep it just taut enough to layer onto the bamboo framing, but loose so it doesn't break. My father's sneer returns to me. A woman's hands on a boy. What use is that in the fields? Before long, I've painted the first few parasols, ash black that fails to fade. Gifts for the high society ladies, wives of the local officials. Some will be for their mistresses and concubines. In the afternoon, my delivery boy will arrive on horseback, ready to collect my wares. Outside, the noises stop abruptly. Shouts echo into the air, now smelling of earth, bitter warmth. A sudden pounding erupts on the roof. It has started to rain. Footsteps tumble as the sellers and hawkers find cover. Some return home, eager to end their days early. Blame it on the spiteful gods if their wives ask why. I'm halfway to my tea kettle when there's a knock at the door. Perplexed, I eyeball from the window, unable to make out the visitor's visage. He is tall, yet not markedly so, well built even from this odd angle. The local officials sometimes send their messengers to me for bespoke work. May I be of help to you, sir? The hood lifts, revealing a high brow atop eyes both dark and studied. Though his features are still handsome, there's a grayness that whittles away at him. His jawline is fixed, with wrinkling, but the slightest of smiles plays on his lips. Even dressed in commoner's clothes, I would recognize him anywhere. The Emperor's most trusted right hand, General Jian, known to commoners and nobles alike as Lord Double Edge. His appearance is needed pretense. A hood in the rain will receive no second glance, thankfully for him. Am I welcome to dry myself under your roof? He says without waiting for my response. He walks in, boots dripping with mud, wiping them carelessly. A moment's pause while he takes in the colorful backdrop of the parasols that line my walls, more for show than anything else as we stroll toward the table near the veranda. The rain is beating harder, lashings rather than insistent taps. The slender arc of a red-crowned crane flaps its wings against the torrent. What brings you to town? I ask. It is my customary question, the one that begins our tea ritual. I pour while he talks, the gurgle of brewed chrysanthemum giving way to its delicate fragrance. His hands wrap around the cup, draining it in one swallow. Too many to name, he answers with a sharp gulp, setting his teacup onto the lacquer table. What have you heard about the magistrate, the newly elected one? Tong, who came into power a year ago and is already playing small games, taking bribes under the chess table. Some say he is a regression from his predecessor, easier to take bait, accustomed to wearing his sleeves long. But few have caught on so far, it seems. If not, there would have been more rabble around these parts. Is Double Edge's reply. Though his dress is simple enough, hanging from his sash at his waist, otherwise concealed, is a small polished plaque made of golden namu, guaranteeing safe passage at any port or checkpoint. For Lord Double Edge himself to ride out, the business was serious. We had met some 20-odd years ago, on a day like this one. At 14, I was sent to the nearest training camp without my father's second glance. Lanky-legged and thin of chest, I was to represent our family in the war against the northern invaders. An honor for any son, it was told to us. Wind-whipped and drenched in rainwater, I was caked in mud within the hour. I would never forget the taste. This one can't fight, one of the lieutenants called as the rain pummeled against my already bruised body. What do we do with him? His superior was younger, maybe a few years older than I, with a shrewd and impenetrable gaze. Beneath his hardened stance, I sensed his hesitation, and I knew I had but one chance. Please, don't send me home. It would be my father's unending shame. I have no brothers. Let me serve you. I can fashion anything you want to name. Swiftly, he descended toward me, his motions like lightning in the ceaseless rain. His face was impassive as he spoke under his breath, so only I could hear. An ear to the ground, and quick hands. Can you do that? His eyes studied mine, a pull that locked in my loyalty, my silence, and my soul. I nodded fervently, unable to believe what I was hearing. You will report to Master Wen, in the nearest village in a day. To his lieutenant, he bade send word. He turned his back to me. Don't make me regret my decision. My life and my honor were spared that day. Jian, as he was known then, would visit the small house I would inherit from Master Wen every so often, always unannounced, always incognito. My trade offered the precious information he needed about nobles and their lives, their comings and goings, their vices and underbellies. Some nights I think about what would happen if I didn't accept his offer and instead returned home like a whipped dog, a life subsumed by disappointment. It was a mercy I didn't deserve. Lord Double Edge pulls out a tight scroll, unrolling it for me to see. It bears the imperial seal stamped in accusatory scarlet. You plan to make his arrest, I say, understanding dawning on me. Unless, he counters, it's premature. There's word that Peng is the small fish. The surrounding regions are like lakes, teeming with unchecked corruption. The numbers of cut purses and vandals grow by the day. There are rumors, yes. Very well. Double Edge stacks 2 gold coins before me. It is our arrangement. He will take shelter but leave as quickly as he has arrived, returning only when he needs my ears and eyes again. I wonder sometimes why he spared my life all those years ago. Yet I know as well as he does that I am one of hundreds, nothing of note, a plain songbird that carries a tune to be taken from its cage at the behest of its owner, rewarded for good behavior and put back into its coop when it no longer serves. So, serve and sing, I would. I cannot say that it is for fear. I own no great lands, nor wealth, and have no family of my own. Of those things I desire none. I take comfort in the common cloth of my living, and the peace that my song grants. Close to my heart is the trust that I will never reveal this secret, and that my own, of old, is stowed away somewhere safe. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you to the staff at Jack Straw for putting this through. And it's been a really sincere pleasure to being able to get to know each and one of you other Jack Straw writers. So I really appreciate it. I have been working on a series of poetry collages made from family video and photo. And as I've been going through the videos especially, I was really struck by, in certain videos, I wasn't able to tell who was speaking off screen, if it was me or if it was my younger sister, Hannah. And the way that it felt true that I was still experiencing those things, whether or not I was there. And over the course of the Jack Straw Writing Fellowship, we had the opportunity to work with this really wonderful vocal coach where we brought in some of our own pieces of writing, and she kind of helped us learn how to read good. And as I was reading some of these pieces, we would have some of that audio played back, and I was just struck by it. Really felt like my sister was reading my poems back again to me. So this poem, as well as the first collage and this book, is for you, Hannah. The title is taken from one of the writer Brace DJ's last letters to his sister. I go back to both sides of the dream. When my sister had a dream, I'd wake up to it in the milked yellow of our room. She'd finish telling with, "And then my dream turned off," which meant some visions just ended. When we talk, it's on the phone. She is walking along the pier, tossing bits of rebar into the Bay of Gaza. Our voices are taken for each other's. Soft, low, open. I hear myself talk about the engine fire, the downship. The pier they built was hardly operational for that month. I don't remember the fire. I must have slept through it. When the rockets fall too close, my sister sits in the mess hall with her platoon. She reads out this poem. Everyone guesses what I mean. Well, what's the answer? Actually, I'm not sure. When she has a dream, I don't wake up to it. We used to share this work. Now, we are in the labor of finding out who we've become to each other. The missing is misplaced, and the pearl hairbrush. I forgot to tell you where I put it. So the title of this next poem, I will ask the audience to suspend their disbelief and pretend that this is a really sick Elvis impression. Whoa, mama, we're all meant for the dirt. Thank you. My mother was born with legs of different aspirations. Metal braces beneath long skirts, uncut hair, and a devotion to Jesus and Elvis. When the radio announced his death, Elvis's, my mother crawled beneath the church's homecoming float and cried. What gestures capable of such loving to hide yourself from the world, to mourn a man's pelvis? This is the only thing I know about her as a person, before she was my mother. A pair of metal legs peeking from crinoline. Memory is the dense white icing on the Barbie birthday cake. Something I ruined by touching. Something I ruined by pretending I hadn't touched at all. I have since crawled beneath the pleated float to mourn with my mother. My need to worship dead celebrities, so strong, I should have been born a Catholic. To lift candles to the belief would all come back somehow. St. Francis, Elvis, my beta fish Cadillac, returned not in perfect visions, but as the cosmic caviar of earthworms, the mustard seeds, the mountains. I and all the oak trees I know, the same 1/1,000,000th of Elvis, of Cadillac. And for my final trick, this, I really wanted to write a poem about this possum I remember so fiercely, but of course the poem ended up being about my mother, so figure. Anyway. How in late August, sky is beginning of school, first Friday blue, bent, curved from the goldenness of the day. There was a possum on the roof of the garage. Pa pumped it full of buckshot. It arched over the other side of the house, crashing through muscadine pins, belly up, tail cobbed like corn nod, tossed in the can. How the mothers stopped their circle of the block. The kids came, peering over the handlebars of their bikes. The sharp of the stick is love, is curiosity, driven to look into the mouth of the wilderness that rest by the chimney and the corners of the house, the garbage bins, the yard. 6 corn stalks planted at the edge, near the drainage ditch. How teenagers set it on fire just before the good harvest. My mother curled up by the windowsill, weeping over the smoked husk and smell of popcorn. How I say my mother wept. You may imagine the way your own mother's hands fold in to weep, and I can say again, my mother, weeping harder now over the burning, and you are still thinking of her, your mother. My mother, my mother, my mother. Clariol black hair, the brown tin of hairspray, the blue mole on her eyelid, the stacks of Danielle Steele paperbacks. But you are walking across a bedroom carpet of a different color, or the linoleum of the kitchen, or the back of a car, when you see your mother from the rear window crying for the first time. Not the first time. Mothers are the deepest hole in language. There's no substitution. We are all thinking of her, my mother. We have forgotten the burning corn. Singed silk floats to the ground. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. And before I forget, I'm going to give a trigger warning for scenes of war. So if you need to protect yourself from that, I certainly understand. Thank you to Levi, to Kathleen, and the rest of the team at Jack Straw and my cohort for this year. When I started in 2022, earnestly looking for opportunities to work on War Boys, in applications, I tied its relevance to the impacts of war on children and to a 2021 estimate from UNICEF that more than 33 million children had been forcibly displaced by conflict at the end of 2020. In its updated report from 2024, UNICEF estimated that more than 47 million children had been displaced as the end of 2023 due to global conflict and violence, a number that ever climbs as conflict rages in Sudan, Palestine, Ukraine, and elsewhere. I'll read tonight in horror of those numbers and in hope for those children. I'd also like to read tonight with my newest great nephew, Teddy, in mind, who was born in January. My father immigrated to the U.S. in 1949 as the sole survivor of his war-decimated family, and he often told me that during the war he prayed for a family of his own to replace the one that he'd lost. Together, my parents had 13 children who had 26 grandchildren, and I believe Teddy is the 18th great-grandchild born of my father's and my mother's prayers. Welcome, Teddy. You are an answered prayer. This is an excerpt from War Boys. I call War Boys a braided memoir because it tells my father's story of surviving the Nazis who adopted him, my story of surviving a father raised by Nazis, and the story of a father and son coming together in 1999 when I was 22 years old to record 50 hours of his history. I asked my father to tell me about the first day of war. He starts with the dirt lodged in his socks. Dirt kicked up as a plane glided low to the ground. He stood tall in the grass just moments ago, fascinated by the plane, its distant hum slapping him from a daydream. It was a pigeon in the sky, then a hawk, and soon a dragon. Why did it fly so close that its engine's whir rang in his ears? It had a queer black mark on its side, a cross with its tips bent over, a symbol he'd seen but couldn't name. The bullets seemed like part of a motion picture, not real life, not real danger. They dinged and bounced off nearby silver trees and loosened the soil, now swirling around his legs. He blinked his blue eyes, and this thought surprised him. They're shooting at me. Why at me? Who is shooting at me? Turned, ran, fast, faster. Maybe others ran beside or near him, but he didn't look. Run faster through the grass he'd been taking a pleasure walk in, to the cabin where another 20 campers, boys about his age of 10, had been playing chess, whittling with pocket knives. He dropped a toy Chisholm as he went, dropped all thought of why or who, and only felt run means live, run means safe, run means inside and away from falling bullets. They must be waiting for him inside. Other pioneers, his counselors, Alexei and Mikhail, must be looking for him. He slammed the cabin door as he entered and saw terrified faces peeking up from under low birch beds, saw Alexei's usually droopy eyes open wide. Volodya crawled underneath and joined him, wondering why Alexei had not come looking for him. No one had called for him. "Volodya, run!" No one screamed. No one told him to crawl under a bed. "Что это?" he asked. "What is it? What's happening?" "Fascisti," Alexei said, his chin to the ground, his eyes on the door, as though at any moment death might march through it. Nazis had arrived. I'm going to jump ahead to about 2 weeks later in 1941. Here my father, Volodya, other campers, and their counselors return home from camp on foot to the Belarusian capital of Minsk, the Nazis having confiscated their vehicles at camp. Reaching Minsk, the group splits up to look for their families in the city. Before camp, Volodya's mother pulled him aside. Her blonde locks fell over her shoulders. She was 36 years old and secretary of the Chemistry Workers' Union, a high-ranking position in the Communist Party. When she entered her office, heels clicking on the floor, all stillness ended. Suddenly, everyone had work to do. They knew she could report infractions to the party, laziness, stealing, insubordination, all could be seen as attempts to undermine her, the party, Stalin. She wouldn't stand for it. She would report you. Then who knows what might happen. She rubbed Volodya's neck, held her belly, and said, "When you return from camp, we might have a new brother or sister for you." As he walked into the black and gray smoke of Minsk, he knew his mother must be worried. She probably wanted to search for him, but couldn't with a baby growing inside her. He imagined her round in the middle, rubbing her hands together, staring out the window and waiting for him to come down the street. She'd be so happy to see her Vova, her baby, her boy. She'd call from their third-story window, "Vova!" and race to meet him. He passed the collapsing skeletons of Belarusian apartments, burning remains of office buildings and grocery kiosks. He was fortunate to be outside the city when air raids began. Luftwaffe planes bombed homes, imploding them. Roofs collapsed. Fire engulfed walls. Citizens scurried out if they could or died. In the first days of the attack, Germans destroyed 700 Russian planes from the air, leaving the Belarusians little chance of an air defensive. The Luftwaffe dropped bombs until June 26th, destroying 85% of the city. They left a wide stretch of buildings untouched around the center. As Hitler's ground forces moved through Minsk, thousands of Germans stayed to occupy what remained as the rest of the army continued eastward. He hardly recognized Minsk. Only the roads beneath his feet felt familiar. Where had the people who lived in the buildings gone? Would he and his mother leave when he got home? He came to the government house near the city center. From across the street, he recognized the men smoking cigarettes on its steps, their uniforms adorned with the same slanted crosses with their tips bent over he'd seen on the plane that shot at him. Fascisti. Shots echoed in the distance. An endless rumble he'd heard from the cliff above Minsk revealed itself as a tank's treads rolled to a stop in front of the government house. Men crawled out like ants. One soldier turned in Volodya's direction from several hundred feet away. He thought he was doomed. The soldier lit a cigarette before turning back to the others. He wasn't the only Belarusian there. A babushka, wrapped in tattered kerchiefs, shawls, and a multicolored skirt, poked through the ashes of a nearby apartment. The grandma was certainly more of a spectacle than he. She mumbled as she sifted with a long stick, but the soldiers ignored her. They chuckled, spoke quick words, and pointed in different directions. They'd set up a field kitchen and stirred pots of a steaming something. As he walked, he saw many Belarusians rummaging. They stood on cement stairs, staring into remains of homes or dirtying their hands in the ashes. Many cried. As he passed a gathering in the street, one cried to another, "What are we going to do?" Some children chased a pigeon. The Belarusians didn't speak to the Germans, and the Germans didn't speak to them. Volodya's muscles tensed as he passed soldiers. He spotted his building from a block away. The closer he got, the better he saw its baked window frames and blackened exterior. The Germans had gotten to it. What about his mama? The daydream of her taking him in her arms fell away. He knew as he stood in front of his home, no one could live there. He climbed the cement stairs. The walls on either side of the front door were charred, windows shattered. He pushed the front door and peered into an unrecognizable place. Walls and stairways had fallen, and he saw a dark sky where the roof used to be. Rubble, dust piles of what used to be home remained. Was Mama buried beneath? He choked on the smoky air before closing the door. He stood on the stairs, dizzy, as he wondered if this was really his home. Had he been confused? He looked to the sides of the steps and saw markings on the remaining walls of his building. Mothers, fathers, anybody had scribbled onto the brown bricks. He searched the charcoal-drawn words. Natasha, if you find this, we will be staying at Uncle Sergei's. Find us. Kolya, we are at Uncle Sasha's in Moscow. He stood, knees weak, for hours, straining to find his name. His stomach churned as he read directives from other people, as he touched the bricks. There were many messages, not one for him. He read the words again and again, searching for a message left just for him. On the audio tapes, I hear my own silence as my father told me this. I remember wondering what it might have been like to be that small, that young, to come home and learn you are alone. His voice as he told the story was measured, like he'd rehearsed the story and how he'd tell it, how it was to be told. That day, I wasn't prepared to ask him anything other than, what happened next? Technical difficulty, sorry. The buildings around his, some in even worse shape, smoldered, collapsed. Scant neighbors in nearby buildings heaved rubble from the piles, called out names of missing family. Vasily, 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 an older woman cried as she bloodied her fingertips shifting rubble. His street was nearly empty. Only a few like him couldn't bear to walk away and admit their lives were gone. The mid-afternoon sun blazed. He shook himself from a daze. Mama might be somewhere, but she was not here. His name wasn't on the wall, and she was not going to call for him. He turned his back on home and walked into the town center again, thinking of food. Fish from one of the kiosks or an apple, but he had no money, and the kiosks stood abandoned. The stores closed. No police, no government, no mail, nothing. Aside from Russians milling about, asking if anyone knew where their families were, his Minsk was gone. As night fell, he wandered several blocks into a new neighborhood where the buildings looked better. Rather than no wall or one wall, some of the apartments had 2 or 3. He shoved a door open and saw the sky through the blown-out roof. He saw straight to the back of the damaged building, but it looked like shelter enough. He balled up next to some still warm ashes. There was nothing stopping him from sleeping there and no one to suggest better. Through shattered windows, he heard Minsk going to sleep. Tanks stopped. Soldiers laid down rifles and slipped under knit covers that used to belong to the Belarusians. Their bellies were full, as his cried. As he described for me this hunger, I flashed back to a moment when I was about 7. I sat on one end of a big brown leather couch in our home library, watching my father ingest a fish. That I sat with him at all, my plate nestled on my lap, makes it peculiar. Perhaps it was early in the day and he'd not started drinking yet. How could I have sat there and remember this without anxiety clinging to the memory? As I fingered the couch buttons, my father, seated on the opposite end, tore into that fermented herring cold from the grocery deli counter with bare hands. He stuck his face into the belly, ripping it apart. He chewed it down to its core, spitting bones to the side of the plate on the coffee table in front of him. He wasted nothing. I watched, horrified. How had he come to eat like this? He turned to me and smiled, an exaggerated grin, masticating with an open mouth like a bear, fish oil glistening on his gray mustache. Other fathers in our affluent suburban Boston town used utensils. They unfolded napkins onto their laps. They didn't hunch over their food and come back up only when it was gone. What kind of animal was he? I sensed his need not to waste a morsel, even if I did not understand it. After I shut off the tape recorder, at the end of the day, my father told me of the story of returning to Minsk. I sat on the salmon-colored couch in my parents' Florida winter condo rental with my mom, watching the local news, exhausted by what he'd shared. My father sat behind us at the dining table and tapped his pipe against an ashtray. "Don't you feel bad for me, don't you?" he asked. I turned to him, saw his face scrunched up, his eyes pinched, nearly closed and moist. I walked behind him, hugged his neck, and kissed his near-bald head. "Of course I do, Papa. Of course I do." That night, a nightmare woke me. In it, my father appeared as the pudgy-faced, blonde 10-year-old I'd seen in a picture, features seen in pictures of me at that age. In my dream, he hightailed it as planes close enough to touch ripped through the sky. I stumbled to the living room, eyelids heavy, and found my father. I curled up on the couch and told him of my nightmare, and he confessed he'd had his own. He paced the living room carpet, illuminating his face with the strike of a match. He looked out the condo window at the moon, its light reflected off the water of the backyard pond. "You damn kid," he muttered. "You're stirring it all up for me." Thank you.